6 North American partners for Varonis, who operates as a Varonis certified delivery partner, meaning that in addition to these nice activities of getting able to work together on marketing activities, we get you guys working closely with our engineering team, and have gotten to the point now where we're out there doing installations for Varonis, customizations with the team on certain reports that you may want run on a monthly basis, and ongoing maintenance for the environment. So it's been an exciting change for us, and something that we've been doing with Varonis now for a little over a year, and look forward to the presentation today from Thomas and Alexa as we get going. So Mark, I'll pass back to you. Obviously, we can provide a lot more information to individuals as a follow-up from this event on some of the work that we do for the Varonis team, but wanted to kind of keep it topical to start.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I am going to take a minute and introduce Thomas Rodriguez. Thomas Rodriguez is a sales engineer with over 15 years of experience in the fields of IT, security, network implementation, and management. Mr. Rodriguez's experience is particularly attuned to companies in the public sector, regulatory, and healthcare industries. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Thomas. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Greg. Wanted to actually located right here in Rochester, sporting the Bills, not jersey, but unfortunately we didn't make it thanks to Leonard's team over there. Congrats on that win. Played a great game. All right, so I just wanted to talk to you real quick about Varonis's data security platform. Again, my name is Thomas Rodriguez. I'm a sales engineer here in Rochester. So just going to give you a quick kind of what, why, how, and where. So Varonis, again, data security platform. So the main use cases are specifically around data protection, meeting compliance and privacy, as well as threat detection and response. So kind of the proactive and reactive both senses. Just a quick check. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep, I can see it.
Excellent, excellent. And let's talk about why real quick. So the desired outcomes, right? So it's our company, it's our employees, it's our customers, right? So it's better security because it's the right thing to do. And from a security standpoint, we really want to stay out of the news. And then finally, avoiding fines, as well as, getting grants, right? We need to meet certain compliances. So whether we can get grants, funding, or contracts that require us to maintain certain, compliances. And then finally, protect data protect the business from disruption, right? There's been a number of attacks. As a matter of fact, this is a new one for me on Monday and Tuesday. Unfortunately, my kids' elementary school, while the whole school system was actually suffered a ransomware attack on Saturday, and so they were shut down. So as if we didn't have enough time at home with the kids, we had a couple more days. So they treated it apparently like a snow day. So it's everywhere, unfortunately. And so, how do we do it, right? And so what's really interesting and unique to Varonis is specifically the data streams that we're after. And so from the core of our product, we're mapping, we're pulling in all the users and groups from your various Active Directory as well as local groups, mapping that back to the permissions that the users have. And then most importantly is capturing the access activity. Everything that we do, all those use cases, all ultimately rely on the access activity. And then finally, we're going to interrogate the contents of the data to understand, if an event occurred on sensitive data. And then finally, to pull in context on all of this by pulling in telemetry, both from the perimeter and Active Directory. And so again, the really unique play here is pulling all of these streams together and being able to leverage them for things like threat detection, to minimize your time to detect and time to respond. I think, the average is unfortunately about 4 months to detect a breach. And having the right tools and the right context is going to help minimize that time to detect and time to respond. And finally, where do we do it, right? We do it on where the unstructured data resides. So we're talking about your Windows servers, your 365 environment, your big NAS repositories, as well as, again, pulling in context from Active Directory across your various domains for VPN, DNS, and web. And please feel free to, jump in, ask any questions. We'll have time at the end, but I definitely want to keep this interactive. So, all right. So I got to do dun, 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 my terrible analogy time. Wouldn't be complete without, terrible audio and animation. So, okay. So, thinking about security and thinking about, I have kids and I have a kitchen. So let's pretend this is my kitchen on the left. It's not really, because my kitchen's not that clean, as you'll see later. But the idea here is that, we have cabinets, we have drawers. When the kids were born, we just locked all the cabinets, right? There's dangerous things in there, chemicals, sharp things, tasty, candies and treats and all that stuff. So we just keep them all out. But as they were growing up, they needed access to certain various drawers and cabinets. And so we kind of started having to control what that was like, what that access was like. And then, having invested in GameStop earlier this week, I'm kidding, but now my kitchen looks like this on the right? There's just millions of drawers and cabinets, and so it's a lot harder to remember what's behind all of that. Taking it up a notch, right? We're thinking about our enterprises, right? And maybe what my kitchen ought to look like, a place for everything and everything in its place, right? So everything's locked, everyone, I know exactly what's behind everything. But the reality and the challenges of all this, right, is, when we think of our unstructured data, it's everywhere. And so, we think we have an idea of what's, in this server or what's in this folder, but do we really know, right? Do we have a way to audit it? And then, the access controls, sure, there's access controls, there's share controls, there's, in SharePoint and Exchange, there's all these different ways to access and to lock it down. So it's really important that we have a tool that can actually do this for us, because let's be honest, we're limited and the machines are taking our jobs. So we really need to leverage that automation and the capabilities that are available to us to make sure that, again, we stay out of the news, we can meet compliance and those use cases. All right, so a couple screenshots here. I just wanted to show you of what that might look like, right? So first, we're starting off with a dashboard, so we can log in, see how much data we have in our environment, see how much of it is not being used. But then again, understand which of those drawers are open to everyone, which of those cabinets are actually locked down. And what we find, right, is Windows by default will share out with the everyone group, or we have large NAS devices where the permissions might be locked down at the share, but what about at the root? A lot of times we just don't realize how much we're managing and what that really looks like from a high level. And then again, we're starting to mix those data streams. So we're starting to see where do we have sensitive data that's behind one of those open cabinets that everyone can access. And so this is oftentimes where we start when we're doing a risk assessment with one of our customers in Atlantic Data Security. We might get a report that looks like this. Tell me exactly how many social security numbers do I have in my environment. So over here on the left, you can see in this particular environment, there's 195,000 social security numbers. And of those 195,000 social security numbers, 10 of those are open to a global access, meaning everybody can get there. The receptionist can get there, interns can get there, contractors can get to those social security numbers. So just being able to map it out to A, locate where that sensitive data is, and then B, being able to understand the permissions. Is it at risk? And again, just a metric from one of our free risk assessments that we do to help customers understand the risk, because it's never a question of do I have risk? It's always a question of how much risk do I have? And then, again, I was talking about the audit activity, right? Understanding what events are transpiring. In this particular demo environment, there's 166,000 events in the last 7 days, and that's not realistic. That's a lab, right? Normally, we see millions of events, but then of there, we can see, well, how many of those events are on sensitive data? And then I want to understand, where did people come in from, right? We have VPNs now. We have people logging into Office 365. I mean, I think the leader of everyone's digital transformation was not their CEO or CTO. It was COVID, right? And so we've all just been pushed forward to enable this remote workforce. So having this visibility, being able to then understand, okay, of these 166,000 events, where are these events coming from? And then trying to understand, okay, who are my top users? Or if I'm specifically after a specific, sensitive data, I could run the same filter and say, who are the users that are accessing my sensitive data, and show me by, by who's doing it the most. And then what PCs are they doing it from, right? So all these events, and you're going to feed into to more as I go on, but just being able to answer these questions really, really fast is really critical, right? Because people ask us all these questions and we don't have time to respond. I remember in my previous job, we were managing a SIM, and this data it took a long time to get these answers, right? And we don't have that time. And so, looking back at the proactive piece of, okay, how do we protect our data, right? So here we're looking at one of the views where we can see this legal folder has a bunch of sensitive data. So we click on it and we see who has permissions to it. And we can see that, sure, the admins have access to it, but it's open to a global access group, right? And so legal doesn't have a problem. Legal's accessing it just fine, right? And hopefully the other departments, I know that I can't access legal, so I don't go there. But that's not good enough, right? We got to protect that. And so we know that we need to remove the everyone group. But the problem is I don't see a legal group on here. So if I remove the everyone group, now all of a sudden the legal folks are going to call and light up my line. So what do? I go talk to the legal department, ask them who should have access. They're saying, well, I don't know, let's just add the legal group, right? It's a very convoluted process. And again, my fear is that the help desk lines are going to light up after we remove and fix this, right? And so what we can do with the information, having this audit activity, we can see, if I were to remove this, who would we expect to have an access error? So I can simulate all this before doing that. So I can now see that these 7 people access this data that are not part of one of these other groups. So before I remove the everyone group, let's create a new group and dump those people in it. And then again, we'll run that same simulation, calculate access, make sure I haven't missed anybody. And if you notice, we didn't actually have to talk to the legal group. We didn't have to talk to anybody. So, with Varonis, we can automate all of this from soup to nuts, creating the groups, scheduling out the removal of the everyone group. So again, proactively lock it down. And when we're thinking about things like ransomware, where do they go? They go after these global access groups. So let's talk about threat detection and response here for a moment, right? I was talking about, millions of events. A very common number that we see with a lot of our customers is easily 1 million events per day, right? And so in this particular environment, over the last 30 days, we saw 43 million events. Of those 43 million events, 8,000 of them were on sensitive data, and Varonis has generated 127 alerts. That's about 4 alerts per day. That's very doable, right? And the idea here is we don't want to generate thousands of alerts per week, because we know that people are just going to ignore them. And so we want to have meaningful alerts. And what I mean by meaningful alerts are, what if a service account logged into a personal device for the first time, right? Why would a backup account, as an example, be logging into a workstation? I'd want to know about that. Or maybe a user is starting to increase more and more amounts of idle and sensitive data. So we're not talking about stale data. This is just idle to that particular user. So being able to bring in, analytics and understand what data that user normally touches, and is it sensitive? And then understand is, maybe there's GDPR data, there's regulated data that was shared with everyone in the organization, right? We're always thinking about, hearing about data being shared, publicly. Well, what about internal overexposure? And then finally, monitoring DNS for things like command and control or data exfiltration, right? DNS is the lifeblood of any environment, because everything runs on DNS. So that's always open, right? And so we need to be able to make sure that we're monitoring it, not just from, known IP, known bad actors, but also from, what a user normally does, and being able to alert on that. And so again, 4 alerts per day is what we want to see, because that's something that we can expect an analyst to look at and have time to review. Again, meaningful alerts. So we talked about, about digital transformation. And one thing that's been remarkable is, Microsoft Teams, the number, I forget the statistics exactly, but the number that has of people that had adopted Teams, over the course of a couple of months post-COVID, had, I think, doubled or tripled over their their customer base that had previously been in the last few years. So it was incredible, the amount of people that are moving much faster to Office 365. So again, we want to look at these high level stats, right? How much data do we have? How much sensitive data do we have in our SharePoint Online, or same thing in OneDrive? How many of it's shared publicly with literally the entire world? Anybody with a link can access this. The trouble there too is that we don't have any sort of traceability, because if somebody were to access it, they never authenticated, right? So that's a huge risk. So again, being able to map the environment and give this in a dashboard is just invaluable. And then again, not just how many links are shared with everyone on the internet, but how many are shared with the organization as a whole. And it's really changed things, right? Before, it used to be IT managing permissions, right? And so we have people that are trained in how to do so, right? Although some of the systems don't make it super easy, and we have so many of these folders, but now we have end users doing sharing. And it's not just, folders. Now they're sharing entire sites, they're sharing individual files. And they have more access than ever, right? Before, you were just at least limited to your organization, but now you can share it outside your organization. And it's not just from one particular platform, right? You can do it from a web browser. You can do it from, your desktop. You can do it from, from one of the applications that you're using as far as sharing the data. And so, going back to like, okay, well, now I'm trying to understand permissions for a specific folder. Well, where do I look? Do I look at SharePoint Online and OneDrive permissions? Well, I might get this view. Do I look in Teams to see who has particular access to a specific site? Well, I'll get a different view. And then finally, if I look at Azure AD, I'm going to get a different set. So if somebody asks me who has access to the site, well, where do I go? And how do I ingest and give this all to them, right? If I ask somebody for the permissions on a particular folder and they sent me 3 screenshots, I'm going to be like, well, what is this? What does this mean? And so being able to have the ability to click on this finance directory and see everybody that has potential access in one view, or via a report equally, is invaluable. And then being able to expand the groups and understand who has access, and more importantly, who has access that hasn't been leveraging their access. And so again, we're leveraging this event activity, and we have these recommendations for removal for people that maybe were previously in the finance group, but now their job descriptions changed and they don't need that access. And so last thing before I pass it back, I again, the unique value that Varonis brings is really the ability to bring all of those different data streams together. Where there's a lot of competitors in different point solutions and classifications and permissioning and event capturing. But what Varonis does really well is specifically target these data stores and give you the information that you need. So, we're capturing events, but they're clean events, right? So this is what a typical event might look like in a SIM, but what Varonis does, it wants to enrich it. David Johnson, what type of account? Is he an admin? Is he a service? Is it a service account? Is he an executive? Is this file sensitive? This IP address, who had that IP address at that time, right? We don't want to go through DHCP logs. This external IP address, where is it from, right? Do we have any business in that location, in that region? And so we can start to build profiles, right? And this is critical because exploits are constantly changing, vulnerabilities are constantly changing. We need to be able to be protected against these zero-day threats. And so, to have these baselines and peacetime profiles are really critical. So when things go awry, we can give you all the context in one single pane of glass, right? So say, this is not David's normal device. This is not the location that he normally accesses things from. This is not when he normally works. Right. And so being able to provide all of that is just unparalleled as far as solutions. So definitely talk to your ADS team and your Varonis team. And if you're not already using Varonis, take us up on our free risk assessment. It's really, really eye-opening. As mentioned, in my 15 years prior to coming to Varonis, I didn't realize how much I didn't know about the networks that I was supporting. So thanks for your time. Any questions about any of this? I'd be happy to.
Yes, thank you, Thomas. If you do have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or pop them into the chat, and we can definitely relay them over to Thomas. And if they come up while we're cooking, feel free to share those with us as well. The only thing I've read is that
I have
somebody.
a quick question.
What's that? Okay, go on.
So this is a cloud-based solution. Is that what this is? Or does this reside in-house?
It's fully on-prem. So, as an example for the risk assessment, it's full access to the system, and we would stand up 2 virtual machines, and so you'd have 2 Windows servers. We do everything on site. Nothing leaves. And then if you wanted to plug in to monitor Office 365, we just plug in an API. It takes about 30 minutes to connect to your tenant.
Cool. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Anybody else have anything? All right. If not, I want to pass it over to Joel. Joel is our chef for today, and he's going to walk us through how to make these 2 amazing dishes. By now, you should have received via email. Oh, hold on one second. There's one that snuck into the chat. A question that snuck in the chat. How would the architecture look in a Azure? I'm sorry, I'm going to mispronounce that. Azure for those tech stacks moved from on-prem to Azure?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So we can, depending on how much data you have in any location, whether it be, spread across the world and different data centers, including the cloud. So depending on the data, sometimes it makes sense for us to put what Varonis calls a collector in Azure. And so I forget what they're called in Azure, but it's essentially an EC2 instance or a VM. And that way we're local to the data. And so we can query the data locally. So when we're doing those file scans, when we're pulling audits or alerting, it'll all happen much faster. So absolutely. So we can put, our collectors in Azure, AWS, and any cloud, public or private of your choice.
And then for auditing for that, so if it is in the cloud, you have really good auditing. I did watch the demo you gave, but I would just want to be clear that auditing for client needs, because clients sometimes have this need to say, okay, who accessed what, who did what, and be able to show evidence in a report.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to pull in all audit events from Azure Active Directory, from Office, from SharePoint Online, Exchange, and then obviously Teams feeds into all of those. So we'll see all those audit activities. And then the nice thing is having that same query window. So if I want to see everything that Thomas Rodriguez did, it's going to show me both everything he did in Office 365 as well as on-prem. So it's a single pane of glass. And obviously, if you wanted to narrow the focus, you certainly could.